let me first say a word about the Italian part of Xi Jinping's visit. This was truly remarkable because there was huge pressure on the Italian government to not sign the memorandum of understanding, including coming from Garrett Marcus from the national security from the White House, saying there will be no economic advantage for Italy. It will ruin the Italian reputation forever globally. Italy went along. They signed the memorandum of understanding. And as Michele Geraci, who is the architect of this whole program, said, the deals which were signed in the context of Xi Jinping visits is just the beginning. These were all agreements which were made out long, long before, and with the memorandum of understanding, now a whole new phase of economic cooperation, scientific cooperation will start. Xi Jinping also went to Palermo, and basically everybody stressed the enormous potential of southern Italy and Sicily, which obviously are very close to Africa, and therefore, can become the bridge of a Chinese-Italian joint cooperation in the industrialization of Africa. And I think that that is one of the most important aspects of this whole arrangement, because it shows the way of how to deal with the migrant crisis and how to, in a human way, deal with a problem which the EU has been utterly incapable of dealing with. Now, this was a big breakthrough. And, then Xi Jinping went on to Monaco and to Paris, where he met with Merkel, Macron, Juncker from the EU. And they basically, it was basically an expression, I think the Europeans are clearly in a dilemma. Because of their frictions with the United States. And unfortunately, they don't differentiate between Trump and other elements of his administration. But they are trying to find, as Mrs. Merkel was saying, they do not want to live in a unilateral world, but they want to build a multipolar world. And, given the strategic realities, there is no way how you can do that without having an alliance or some cooperation in depth with China. Now, I think that the momentum of the Silk Road, the new Silk Road, and all the economic opportunities which go along with it, China is, after all, still the fastest growing market in the world. I think for the EU, China is the second largest trade partner after the United States. For China, the EU is the largest trade partner. So I think the dynamic is clearly going in the integration of all of this. And Michele Geraci, who immediately after the visit of Xi Jinping went on to the Boao Economic Forum in China, which is the Chinese equivalent of the Davos Forum, where he gave a very upbeat interview, I think, to the South China Morning Post. And he said, all the critics of Italy, they're just jealous. And he predicted that, it will be just a short period of time until every European country will have joined step by step. And he said there are already 2 countries ready to sign the memorandum of understanding. This is already in the pipeline. So he was very optimistic. And then also other people from Italy basically said, this is, and Geraci too, this is not directed against Italy's allies. The historical ally number 1 for Italy is the United States, and naturally also Europe. But basically, Italy can play a very important role of mediation between, on the one side, the other European countries and China, between the United States and Europe, and the United States and China. So I think that Italy has a completely new self-confidence in that. And we will hear a lot more because, they also expect to come out stronger in the coming European Parliament election in May. So I think this has put Macron and Merkel and Juncker, for that matter, in a position, where they, on the one side, cannot deny the economic advantages. For example, Macron signed deals worth 40 billion. 20 billion of this was, European projects like 300 Airbuses. The Airbus is a German, French, Italian, British consortium, and 300 Airbuses is not little. But then 20 more billion were just different deals between France and China. I think very important is joint space agreement, where France will now participate in the next lunar mission of China, the Chang'e 6, and they will bring back samples from the moon together. So I think, also nuclear cooperation and other high technology cooperation was resigned. So I think, there is something which, I don't know if I know the English word, that were something like the normative power of the facts. And I think this is what's operating, because, it is very clear that Europe has absolutely no future without the cooperation with China. And one can only hope that, the efforts by the neocons to ruin that. You mentioned the new version of the Committee on the Present Danger / China. They say that the old Committee on the Present Danger helped to, to defeat the Soviet Union, and that now the big existential enemy is China, and therefore all efforts have to be directed against that. So I think this is really, really bad, because, this is the old geopolitical thinking, which can only lead the world into the Thucydides trap. And actually, you can really see who are the paid media who spout that line. On the same day this Committee on the Present Danger China was refounded, Bild-Zeitung, the German tabloid, had almost the entire page 2 devoted to 8 lies against China, which don't hold. Nobody, who has any dealings with China believes it, but the propaganda effort is absolutely unabated.